What?
This,
I printed it myself.
Where'd you find it? Where was it?
in the back.
Inside there?
Yeah.
She doesn't work with this. This is the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Today is July the 25th, Tuesday. Let the record reflect that Council President Kendra Vasquez is here, Council Vice Chairman of the Committee David Abdu, and I'm Mark LaPlante, the Chair. Not sure if we have any minutes. We do. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, can I have the record reflect that I abstained from the minutes vote?
Yes, let the record reflect that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I guess we can go in order. 275-18 FY18 Capital Improvement Plan. Actually, you know something? This is going to be, Mr. Ryanello, let me ask you for your guidance, please, sir. I know there's a number of different items on here. How long is the presentation for the Capital Improvement Plan? I see a lot of people here. I'm presuming they're all speaking on that issue or here for that issue?
There's three issues that are here, the capital reserve and the capital improvement plan. There's two capital reserves and one capital.
And everybody's here for that, for
Everybody's
those?
here for that, yes.
So expect that to be long. Mr. Vega, are you also here for the Capital Improvement Plan or not? No? Why don't we just deal with Vega first? What do you say?
Yeah, I think that would be faster.
Okay. Vega first? You don't care? Mr. Vega, we're going to take you out of order. 'Cause you're not out of order, but we're going to take you out of order. Is there a motion to take off the tabled, looking for it, document 11016 off the table matters?
So moved.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Just to recap, members of the committee, this is a proposal to put a pilot program, a payment in lieu of tax program. This is, when we last had this conversation, we asked Mr. Vega if he would provide, and he has provided for this committee, some samples as to how various potential options with respect to the attributing various requests for monies from the nonprofits in the city, and he has put that together. So we did have a lengthy conversation at the last meeting. I don't know if we need to rehash what we went over last time, so maybe we can just start from what you provided for this committee and talk us through what you submitted.
Okay. So what I prepared for the Budget and Finance Committee is a listing of all the exempt entities in the city of Lawrence. And with that listing, it's a roughly a 5-page spreadsheet detailing the land valuation, the full and fair cash market valuation, and the three options that was discussed in our previous meeting. Option 1 is to determine the assessed value of land and multiplying it by its corresponding
Can I
tax
stop you
rate.
right there, Mr. Vega? Where is, you sent, at least, I think to all of us, the three options as it relates to City Hall and two others.
Yes.
I'm not seeing that in the packet, unless I'm missing it.
It's,
That's it, okay.
You'll see it in the form of the property record card. So option 1 is determine the valuation of, determine the assessed value of land and multiplying by its corresponding tax rate of residential class or the commercial tax rate. Option 2 is multiplying the land value by the FY 2017 single rate. As you know, the city of Lawrence has a split rate. And option 3 is determine the full and fair cash market value of the exempt properties and multiplying it by the corresponding tax rate and discounting or 75% or determining the tax bill and determine the 25% of that tax bill if it was on the tax rolls. So the council has asked for samples of various properties in the city, but not targeting any specific exempt entities. So what I prepared for you is the first one we can go through is City Hall. So you'll see the property record card is known as 200 Common Street.
Yep.
In the sample letter that Councilor LaPlante has worked on, I basically worked off of that and determined that on option one, which is the land value times the tax rate of 33.59, the land valuation for 200 Common Street, if you were to adopt option one, is $105,800. It's a 14,819 square foot lot. The tax bill, based on the formula, would come out to $3,553.82. I'll quickly go through number two, option number two. Similar formula, except we're using the single rate without using the split rate of the commercial. The single rate is $19.19. This tax bill amount would be $2,030.30, again, using the land valuation. Option three is 25% of the full and fair cash market value times the commercial rate. The assessed value of City Hall, as it currently stands, is $4.6 million. And the tax bill would be $38,912.34. Second one I'd like to go through is a residential apartment complex. It's owned by the Lawrence Housing Authority. The full and fair cash market value of this property is $11.9 million. The land valuation on this property is $1.9 million. Option one would earn a tax bill of $29,382. Option two, land value times a single rate of $19.19 would be $36,756. And option three is 25% of what the taxes would be if it was on the tax roll would be $45,870.44. There's two more scenarios, if you'd like me to play those out.
I'm not sure, committee members, do you want him to walk through the other two scenarios? One's the hypothetical South Florence East and the hypothetical New Library? Boy, did we get the idea? Yes? Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee?
Through you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if this will be a question to the assessor or to you, but given that this is a voluntary program, I know when we look at the sample letter as submitted, there's a 60-day provision here that says as to when they will be making the payment. Should we keep that provision, or should we simply say within the fiscal year? Because I think that if we were to say you have to do it within this time frame, it could also scare off some nonprofits that will be willing to do it, but they might not have the funds available within that time frame.
So let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to flip that question on to Mr. Vega. I know that you've read and you've talked to other assessors in other communities. What kind of feedback can you offer to the council president with respect to having a set time frame versus having it without any kind of deadlines, or far more lenient deadline?
So basically what I've seen in the past or in other communities is they roll it out sometime in April and they give the folks till the end of the fiscal year so they can allocate those funds to that fiscal year. But I agree with you, as long as we roll it out and have them pay eliminate that 60 days, say within this fiscal year, which ends June 30th, we can definitely clear that language up for you. And that way we know that those funds are going to that fiscal year and that org that will be created by the Budget and Finance team.
So, can I follow up on that question?
Yeah.
So if we do that by the end of the fiscal year, would we need to accept the money prior to that, because it's a donation to the city? Or can we wait until the very last day of June 30th, or do we need to get it like by May something?
I don't think these would be considered donations. It would be covered under a pilot agreement. So
Yep. So we could accept it as late as June 30th?
we wouldn't accept it. We would pass the, I'm not detailed with everything's going on here, but obviously, coming up with the plan, we would invoice or work with the nonprofits who are in a pilot agreement, and whoever agreed, we would send them a bill, and it would be due by June 30th. And those pilot agreements, we would, depending on how solidified they are, we would either use those as estimated receipts for next year's budget, or if it's completely voluntary, we wouldn't be able to estimate who's going to pay and who isn't.
I think that satisfies my question.
Are there any other questions by members of the committee? Hearing none, I'm not sure if the committee is looking favorably upon this. If the committee wishes to send this up to the full council to allow the full council an opportunity to do something collectively rather than just at the committee level. If it decides it wants to go to the full council level, which is, if this committee decides it's a good idea, I would like to see it move up to the full council level and have the authority of the full council behind this, if it has enough backing. And if that in fact is the case, the assessor, we have asked him for 3 different options. We have received 3 different options. My recommendation, because this is strictly voluntary, is to go for option 3. Certainly they could, the nonprofits can certainly go for that, or if that's something that they're not fully desiring to do, they can always give less than that. But certainly we can provide basis for why we get to that point, as the assessor says, and I think we can, in good faith, throw that to them and make the request.
Yep.
So that's my recommendation.
And if I can just add that piggybacking off the methodology that Boston has implemented is a similar one that you just opted for. But
So that's good to know. So you just said to me that Boston already has adopted what is number 3 on this list.
Correct.
Very good.
And they put some other criterias or thresholds on the valuation of the exempt entities. As you can imagine, you got top-notch colleges,
Hospitals.
doctors' offices, hospitals, so their threshold is $15 million and above. Obviously, we don't have that, as you can see with the Excel spreadsheet, and we alluded to in the first meeting to put it across the board, but we can also work on some other things that you might want to eliminate. Obviously, we talked about removing city, state, cemeteries, MVRTA, things of that nature. LHA, any 121As, we remove them for the listing. We get a hardcore number because the exempt total valuation of the city is $775 million.
So let me go back to the spreadsheet. You have option 1, 2, and 3 on there. The very first one, just as a hypothetical, the amount that we would be requesting based on option 1 would be $2,455. On option 2 would be $1,402, and option 3 would be $1,799. So what I'm seeing here is option 3 is more for some, would be more than option 1 for some, and in some cases less than option 1 for some,
Correct.
in this particular case.
All depends on the zoning. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Abdi.
through you, Mr. Vega, is it based on the zoning, or is it based on the use of the property itself?
The use of the property itself.
So if it is pre-existing non-conforming, or if it's an odd piece in a district, a zoning district, it doesn't matter, it's what it's being,
It's what's being used as, correct.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. The floor is open for any member who wishes to either make a proposal or to table or take some action.
Mr. Chair, I feel comfortable sending it up to the full council at this point. I'd like to make a motion that we send it up to the full council.
Would you like to have the motion include a recommended option out of the three?
Option 3?
Okay. There's a motion to send this document to include option 3 as the recommended Budget and Finance Committee version, option. It's been made. Is there?
Second.
And there's a second. If there's no, is there any further discussion?
Negative.
Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Vega, our next meeting is on August the 15th. Would you be willing to come back for that as well? I am fairly confident there may be questions arising at that meeting.
Absolutely. I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the background work you provided for this committee on this. We appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on. 275-17, the FY18 Capital Improvement Plan, transfer from capital reserve for $716,000. Mr. Ianello?
Yes, Counselor, this is the transfer from the Capital Reserve Fund for $716,000, which was approved in the Capital Improvement Plan last week. And before you are the specific projects. They're itemized in my memo. Police building repairs, electrical system upgrades at the branch library, fire dispatch software, repair and replace city-owned lighting units, purchase a front-end loader, replace police vehicles, a new electrician boom truck for the fire department, and replace the fire prevention vehicle. They total $716,000.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Abdi?
Mr. Ianello, pertaining to the front-end loader, where do we get this price from? Is this just a ballpark, or is it off of a web search? It seems like a low number to me.
Well, I get these from the DPW director, so he's here to answer the question. Carlos can perhaps answer that.
Yes, good evening, Councilor. That quote came in from a quote from one of our suppliers, particularly Schmidt Equipment. We asked them to give us a quote earlier this year when we were exploring costs for different types of models of loaders, and this is the cost that they gave us. They're on state contract right now, which the city is able to purchase services out of that state contract, which allowed us to give us a better price on that particular model of loader.
So it's obviously a front-end loader. It's a full-size front-end loader, and it's a new product?
Yes, it is a new product and is the appropriate size that we need for our operations. There are bigger sizes, obviously there are, but this is the size that we need for our operations.
I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Heckes, and thank you, Mark, Mr. Ianello.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to send this to the full council with our recommendation.
A favorable recommendation?
Favorable recommendation.
Motion been made.
Second?
And second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next document is 27617, the FY18 Capital Improvement Plan, authorization to borrow $3,964,040. Mr. Ianello?
Yes, councilors, this is, again, all of the items except for the school-related items in the capital improvement plan are before you tonight. The school-related projects aren't ready to go before the council for funding until we get past the necessary requirements from the Mass School Building Authority, but that will be very shortly. Those projects will be in front of the council. So this is everything other than the school projects. And that was in the capital improvement plan approved on July 11th. Again, they're itemized here. I won't list, they're all itemized here. They total $3,964,000, and they're various improvement projects as listed before you. Oh, I have all the department heads here in case you have any questions specifically about any of the particular projects listed.
Any questions by members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Rabdi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Mr. Ianello or the police chief, who I saw earlier. The last item, to replace the radio system infrastructure, portable radios and mobile radios. Does that entirely replace all communications, all audio communications for the police department? And is it compatible with the newest state police technology?
I conveyed your question to the police chief, so I think he can answer that tonight.
Good evening, councilors. Yes, currently our system is analog. We have no way to communicate with the state police unless we have a special tie-in. And that usually is only in the case of special events. But when we switch to all digital, that will give us compatibility with the state system. The infrastructure of the current radio system, some of the most, the oldest being the tower antenna is from 1983, and some of the inner workings are from 1995. So it's pretty long in the tooth. I know it's a significant outlay of capital for a radio system, but it's sorely needed. We've experienced several instances where we lose communication. Difficult to find parts for the older console, but this will give us a lot more interoperability, which is being able to communicate with agencies such as state police, our federal partners, and then the fire department.
Thank you for that response, Chief. Will this dollar amount replace all of your audio needs?
This includes mostly the consoles. What we have been doing through the Justice Assistant grants over the last, I think, 3 cycles, we have been replacing, because a lot of different municipalities and agencies are going through this changeover process. We have been purchasing the handheld radios, the walkie-talkies, and the mobile units which go into the police vehicles. Those are, for the lack of a better term, multi-port or multifunctional, where they can work analog. And so currently on it, they work analog, and they'll be able to work on our switchover. So we've replaced well over 120 or 30 portables. There is a portion of that outlay for mobile units and handhelds, but it wouldn't at this point be enough to cover all of it. But as we've been upgrading the last couple of cycles, we'll be ready to go.
So, with the current crisis, opioid crisis, where we read published media reports of multi-jurisdictional efforts going on in the city, with this new equipment, would the Lawrence Police Department be able to speak directly from one of our mobile vehicles to a state police vehicle with no special connection, or to a third party other than maybe its own dispatcher?
Yeah, they require the dispatcher to do a tie-in with the state police. They'd be able to monitor us, and we'd be able to speak to them. That would be on a general channel. That would be up to, I haven't looked into that. That would be up to their agency whether or not they wanted to have direct talk with us.
So to back it up, is it going to make your multi-jurisdictional efforts, whatever they may be, whether it's drugs, prostitution, whatever the crime may be, is it going to make your night-to-night, day-to-day operations easier?
Absolutely. Yeah, they will allow us to, at any point, with the flick of a switch or a change of some, software, opening up the ports and those things. It's amazing how much smaller it is, even size-wise, than what we currently have. We have pretty much almost a whole room full with equipment, and it's probably the size of a small refrigerator with the new system. So there will be, just an adjustment with the software There'll be dial-in features, you know, once FirstNet, which is another, more of a cellular-based, phone-based system comes out, you can, you know, even if I'm out of town, I'll be able to dial into the dispatch system and talk like my phone's a radio with an app.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President?
Yeah, so I have a question, actually, in regards to the replacement of fire radio system and the replacement of the police radio system. When I look at both amounts, and if I were to add both of them, the fire department is taking 13% of the budget here for the radio system replacement. So I wanted to understand, I would like to understand the difference between the two to justify the cost in the police department.
Is the difference between the fire and the police?
I mean, yeah, I understand probably the police department will need more radios, but we're replacing the system, so why is the police department taking $952,000 and the fire department $140,000, which is only 13% of that?
I'm not sure that they may not be upgrading their whole system. I'd have to defer to the fire
To
department.
the fire chief, yeah? Because there's a big discrepancy in terms of the cost for the radio system replacement for both departments, and
Good evening, Councilor. Our radios, we're just replacing 47 portable radios, and the mobile radios in the vehicles we have 5 fewer radios than they do. We're not changing our whole system. We want to upgrade our radios now because we have unable to communicate with other agencies. Our radios are so old that they only have 16 channels. The newer radios and the federal regulations want us to be able to use what's called the VTAC channels and a whole spectrum of different channels so that we could literally go across the state and the country with the same radio simply by changing to the assigned radio frequency. The radios we want to buy have probably 16 different bands with 16 different channels in each band, where now we only have 16 channels. But we only need we're only replacing for the 44 that we have and the mobile radios and the vehicles that we have, and we have 5 fewer than the police department. We're not changing our base station or any of that stuff.
okay, I think that helps a little bit clarify. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions, comments, motions?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we send this up to the full council with a favorable recommendation as presented.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? So I'm just doing some math here, councilors. We have one more number. Approximately $4.6 million. But if you look at both places that we're looking to authorize for either the borrowing and the transfer from the capital reserve, out of that, almost half of that is going for public safety. Over $2 million, just doing some rough math, looks like it's going to public safety. Oftentimes, I know that when I'm meeting constituents, they ask me, what's the most important issue? I flip that question immediately, I go, what's the most important issue to you? And they almost always say to me, public safety, and I have to agree. They want to make sure they're safe. They want to make sure the police department's there in a timely manner. They want to make sure the fire department's there fast. Public safety, making sure they're safe has always been the number one thing. And again, through this capital improvement, I'm noticing again that the bulk of the money that we're looking to spend is being spent on public safety. So I think that we're hearing, I think the administration is hearing loud and clear that there's a need, and what we're doing here is we're putting our money where our mouth is, and that there's money going toward the very places where there needs to be improvements. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I noticed in this is, you may recall, we had an ample discussion regarding the Disabilities Commission back 3 or 4 months ago, perhaps. It's been a while. And then I made this impassioned plea that we're not forgetting about the folks that are the disabled and that we're in fact doing things. A couple things came to mind. One, which we already passed in the budget, was a disability, we provided for a disability staffer. We provided more money for that staff to be able to spend. And then the last part of the commitment that was made was money to make ADA improvements throughout the city. And you'll notice again, there's $100,000 toward making ADA improvements through the city. So when we talked about, we weren't ignoring folks back 3 months ago, and that was the discussion that was made. We are now seeing that come to fruition through the budget and now through the capital improvement portion of this budget. So I just wanted to highlight those 2 points because I know that they are and have become or have been real touchstone issues throughout our city. And it's important that we pull those out and recognize them. So there's a motion that's been made. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. This has been sent up to the full council on the August 15th. And my question, if you don't mind, Mr. Ryanello, is timing. I anticipate that the council will take this up on the August 15th meeting. We don't need to order a public hearing for this, is that correct, or do we?
No, the loan order requires a public hearing. The capital improvement projects do not.
All right, we already ordered the public hearing for
Yes.
that meeting, that's
Yep.
correct. So, as soon as we have that public hearing on the 15th,
Right.
if we have an up or down vote, if it is successful, then we will, how quickly thereafter will we see the actual bond authorization being placed?
Once the council approves the loan order or the authorization to borrow, we can start the projects. We just need that vote. When we borrow the money will depend on cash flow. The first thing that happens is we need to appropriate the money, create an account so department heads can access it, get quotes, get bids, and go through the normal procurement. And just to reiterate that this 3.9 million is all the department's best guesses when they put the capital improvement plan together several months ago, and it'll all come down to actual bidding of certain prices. Police chief has some specific, everybody has some quotes, which hopefully they'll still be good by the time these projects commence. So that's pretty much in a nutshell how it's going to play out.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Reinell. Let's move on with our agenda. Number 26717, appropriation transfer from the Capital Reserve Fund. This is for $263,335. Mr. Reinello?
Yes, councilors, this is the remaining balance in the Capital Reserve Fund, and it's to be used for matching funds for a Department of Transportation Mass DOT grant for traffic signal replacement. I have the planning director and the DPW director who can speak specifically to that project. Carlos, I would like to field it.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
So I've been before you in the past to talk about the various different transportation projects and improvements that we've been able to accomplish. And the reason why we've been able to do that is because we've been able to get projects placed on what's called the Transportation Improvement Program. And for the most part, these projects, the commitments for these funds, or funds for these projects get committed about 4 to 5 years in advance. We have been successful in that, certainly with the Park and Lawrence project, for example, where there was surplus or uncommitted funds that were available within a particular fiscal year of the Transportation Improvement Program, and we've been able to divert those funds to a project and go through the process for project development in a timely way to get these projects funded. Now, next year in the TIP, there is approximately just over $260,000 between $260,000 and $280,000 available in the TIP. One of the intersections that's been identified as for needed improvements is the intersection of Haverhill and Ames. We have been working with traffic engineers to look at that intersection, whether or not it merits a a traffic signal based upon accident records, traffic volume, and in fact, it actually does. So we would like to be able to proceed with getting that intersection not only signalized, but also make some additional access improvements as well. Because typically when you go through the TIP process, those are the baseline requirements that that need to be made as part of the improvements. So the transfer would allow us to, the project is estimated about $500,000. So the transfer of this amount would allow us to come up with the balance to be able to undertake this project.
Where does the intersection of Loring Street and Salem Street and that traffic signal fit in this hierarchy of needs? We talked about that before. There's a traffic signal need calibrating, and it was me. I'm not sure if this is, you were calling this at all, but we were looking.
Lawrence and Salem, or you mean like what's? Oh, is it
Loring.
Loring. Yeah, Loring. So that was one of the intersection we actually had the planning commission take a look at, and I actually had a conversation today with Tony Komornik about that. So they will be preparing a more formal response to that, but the challenge is there is going to, going from flashing to full signal, there is some concern that it will cause some backup. So those are some of the preliminary findings of their traffic study. I don't have the full report yet. I don't have their formal submission to us as far as the findings, so I can't report to you fully. This is just based upon the cursory information I had with them today.
So this money right here is only going to go for Ames and Ames
Yes.
and
Haverhill.
Haverhill Street. Okay. Any other questions of members of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
As we discuss Haverhill and Ames, and the chairman brought up one in his district, I've got at least two, actually closer to three, signals which are almost as old as I am. And if you can ask the fire chief, at least monthly, I'm calling, texting, emailing him that they're out and they're flashing. And it's their age. So it's great that we're investing money in new signalization at places where they need it. But what is the city's plan for upgrading the 30 to 50-year-old signals that are out there and running on old technology? And I feel dirty saying old technology, because to call it technology at all seems like a misnomer from what I understand how they operate, so.
Right. And we certainly, I think Carlos could actually probably speak more technically about it. We certainly do have some very antiquated traffic signal equipment in the city. I think that when we were looking at, for example, going back to the park in Lawrence, I mean, I think the traffic control system was such that, I mean, you would expect a squirrel to be a hamster in there to be actually working the system.
Amen.
So so we are trying to tackle that, and so we have a number of intersections that we're going to be improving, certainly in the downtown area, to help with the traffic flow. I think there's some concern about the traffic flow movements here. So we'll be upgrading some of the signals on Lowell and Common. Now, the fire department also maintains a database of all the traffic signals and their age and so on. So we actually have gotten that information from them, and we're trying to make progress as far as working on those intersections with some of those antiquated systems. I would also add that we are trying to look at some of the intersections in the different parts of the city. One of the ones we're looking at is Mount Vernon and Broadway, for example. I think that you had raised that as a concern, and so we are looking at that with a number of others in the city as well. So even though we're talking specifically about Haverhill and Ames, that doesn't preclude us. It doesn't mean that those are the only intersections that we're actually working on. We are looking at others throughout the city. I don't know, Carlos, if there are other things you would like to add to that?
Just want to add specifically to the locations that the planning director, Park, was just mentioning about. The main priority of trying to get the funds allocated has to do with that DOT funds a specific project for a new signalization. That's money that's readily available, but for existing intersections, it really falls upon the city to be able to plan out and identify those specific areas where we should be going back to existing lighting intersections and how we can make those improvements. I know Theresa has been working with the traffic engineers to identify those areas, one of them being Mount Vernon and Broadway, and I think the other one's Salem and
Before you make an investment on the other end of the city, I want to make sure it's South Broadway and Mount Vernon.
Yes, it's south of
I
Pearl
don't mean to be a
Harbor.
wise guy,
Yes.
but just
Yes.
so people at home know, because it is something I hear often about, and the chief knows that.
Yeah, so as part of this project, like Director Parker just mentioned, we will be focusing on that specific intersection, but there are other intersections around the city that we will be working on above and beyond what this funding of the line item will be able to provide.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Continue.
While I have the two of you here, if you could just walk me through, I don't know if it's through history or lineage or whatever, it doesn't seem efficient that we study signalization one place, we make ADA accessibility improvements and other physical improvements through another department, and then we have a third department that actually does the day-to-day. You know, when I have a problem, or when any one of my colleagues have problems, we reach out to the fire chief. Why is it so disjointed that it's kind of spread out over three places, and why isn't it all in one place?
I really couldn't answer that question for you. I think it's just that maybe historically, the expertise fell within the different departments, and I think there's some of the legacy aspect of it. I will say that, though, that I do work very closely with DPW. Carlos has been wonderful to work with, and even though I think we bring different expertise into this. So I come into this from the planning side, Carlos comes into this from the engineering side, and so we're able to combine those two different skill sets and two different sort of professional approaches in dealing with some of this problem solving. So, I mean, it could very well be, I think part of the reason why I ended up doing a lot of these transportation projects in the beginning was because the need was there. And I think that since Carlos was there, the city recently also replaced the state engineer position. It could very well be that more of the work that I've been doing would migrate over, and then that would allow me to assume different types of responsibilities. And I think it has a lot to do with there are some legacy things and just sort of the general capacity and where the strength lies and where the needs of the city is, and then just trying to make sure that we could address, factor all those things in as we approach some of these issues.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President.
I am very excited to see this happen because every time I go to the Tower Hill Neighborhood Association meetings, this is something that they bring up. So I am grateful for the work that will be happening. But again, can I get an idea of the timeline when? Because they will start questioning me as soon as they hear that this is going forward, and I wish to have an opportunity as to when this will happen physically.
This is the TIP 2018, am I correct?
So yes, they operate under the federal fiscal year, so the October 1st to September 30th. Now, there is this this is in the 2018 TIP.
Okay?
So, which means that, October of next year.
October next year.
Right, but there's a whole process that we need to follow with Mass DOT where we go back and forth on the design and everything before we get to the point of getting the green light from MassDOT. But it should, I would think that the construction and everything should be able to be done by spring of 2019.
The good thing about this specific project, Haverhill's Ames, is that it's not a full-blown intersection design. The scope of the project is limited to 88 improvements and a traffic signal installation. Hence, limiting the scope actually allows us to go to the design and review process much faster than an average full-blown intersection design. So that's one of the key differences versus other projects that you may have seen in the city that take longer, is that this is sort of a scaled-down intersection design versus other ones in the city.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Ms. Park? One very quick question.
Yes.
You keep mentioning TIF,
Yes.
not tax increment financing. Whenever I hear
No,
that,
TIP.
it's got to mean something else.
Transportation Improvement
TIPS.
Program.
TIPS,
TIP,
IPS.
TIP,
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
as opposed to TIF, yes.
Yeah, TIP.
TIP, got it. Thank you.
It's the odd.
Thank you.
The acoustics.
Sandy's going.
Is there a motion?
Motion to send up to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next, Document 25917, the Lawrence Police Department request approval to accept a donation from Woodward and Kern for something that's audio and video for $17,270. I cleared the house.
Good evening, councilors.
You don't want to listen to this, folks? This is very exciting. This is audio, video.
There'll be an extra credit question at the end.
Even the chief of staff's not even staying for this. That's not good. All right, go ahead.
First, I'd like to commend the chair of his sartorial transformation.
Thank you very much, Police Chief, yes. I want to apologize for you and everyone else for waiting for me. I had a bike flat this evening, and so, but I appreciate your patience and your understanding.
Thank you. Tonight, on the agenda is the donation, a generous donation from Woodard and Curran for a audio and video installation, which would improve our current interview room and bring it into compliance with some of the standards of criminal court that require us to audio and video admissions of guilt, confessions, et cetera, et cetera. This will provide for some cutting-edge software as well that will immediately not only capture the audio and video of the interview, but will also transcribe the information that is the verbal information that is spoken in the interview. So as they're speaking, it's kind of like a I forget what it's called, Dragon or something like that. It's similar software to that, which will transcribe the actual interview. This the bulk of the cost is a standalone server, which again is court compliant. It's not intermingled with any of our other servers. It's a standalone server that will be keeps us within the chain of custody of the chain of evidence for this type of material.
Okay.
I appreciate this discussion.
Again, I'd like to thank Jim Ravad from Woodard and Curran for the generous donation. This is their second donation. The first was, I think, in fiscal 2014, which provided us to outfit 15 cruisers with defibrillators. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. President?
Jim and Mr. Woodward and Woodward and Curran have been, grateful to the city of Lawrence, and we appreciate, this donation. So at this point, I don't have a question other than, thank you. Just
Oh, okay. But we
wanted to
appreciate
say-
helping the city. The chief called and said that they could use a little bit of help, and then I said we can definitely help you out. But he promised that he wouldn't use the system on me if I ever need to be interviewed by the police. So
That's not true.
so yeah, seriously, more than really happy to help the city out where we can.
Thank you.
So,
The next goal for you is to create a new police station. Can you work on that, please? That would be a nice
might be
gift.
a little more than we can help out, but
All right.
Donation for FY19, maybe?
on me,
A police station donation for FY19?
yeah, sure.
Tax write-off.
Bring the brass shovel.
Right.
Is there a motion?
Motion to send up to a full council with a favorable recommendation.
Motion made.
Second.
And second, thank you very much, and we'll say it again, I'm sure at the full council level. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
One last one, Police Chief, I think you're up for this last one here, is the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative Grant. Another one, $600,000.
This, I made a request through the city clerk's office to table this.
Oh,
There's
okay.
been some adjustments in the state allocation. There may be a cut of about 35%, so that figure unfortunately would not be accurate. We're still awaiting the adjustment in the outlay from, I think it's coming from administration and finance, or, I strike that, I think it's actually Health and Human Services is adjusting. I think it's 35% for all partners of the Safe and Successful Youth Initiative.
Okay.
So you want to table this, and if I understand you correctly, you're waiting for different numbers. You're not sure what the
Yeah, I
numbers
don't know how else to proceed.
are. Okay.
Motion to table?
Motion made. Second. And second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, the ayes have it. Is there anything else on our,
Thank you.
thank you, chief. Anything else on the agenda that we want to bring up this evening?
No, motion to adjourn?
Motion is made.
Second.
And second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, the ayes have it.